Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome, Leslie. Welcome, Sonja. Hi, honey. Laura, and those that I didn't call you by name, I just receive you here in the depths of my heart for you to take the time. And the music I was playing before I started the class to just connect a little bit was called Be the Light. And I thought, well, that's what we're doing here. And the opening tune of it is, maybe I'll play it before we hang up tonight. In a world that has hate in it, be the light. And I was celebrating that it sounds absolute to say it, but it feels as true as anything I've ever seen, that every single person I know, you, the family, the people that are in my car, the people that are in classes, the people that are in those programs that I do, those immersions and EO groups, are being the light. Like we're at something. We're reading, studying, thinking, teaching, forgiving, surrendering, processing, allowing, looking again, writing checks, helping somebody, dropping off food, like everything under the sun, leaving little voicemails, writing cards. There's another stack of cards went out today. So it's like be the light, and I just celebrate it. And that whatever is calling us, the light that's calling us to be the light, I bow to that today. And I bow to the light in you as you, and whatever is impulsing you to literally be about creating the world that interests us, and to be part to all the power we have, inherent, innate, infinite power that we have to be about creation, that I bow to you, that you actually do that you're about that. And it's a privilege to witness and to be any part of that. So I wanted to look tonight with you all. I was so shocked to read that scientifically, this is from that article, What is the Science Behind Fear? That there's only 2 fears at birth. Have any of y'all read that? On page 72. And that the fears are loud noises, which didn't shock me at all, because I see this in children and I see their reactions to loud noises. And I don't recall that as a kid. I don't recall being startled. I don't recall being affected really by loud noises. I would say that what I do recall is having more of a reaction to emotions. So not just a loud voice, but because I could hear people cuss and use profanity like it was normal. It was normal. Their cussing was normal. But then I hear this cussing with a certain energy to it. I hear profanity with a certain energy to it. And I had a much more of a reaction to that energy than the cussing or the profanity itself. So this surprised me, actually. So then if this is actual, when we hear loud sounds, we go to fight or flight, a startle response, and even that we'll duck our heads or whatever. And I remember reading about Carl Jung believing that we had the will to overcome fear, and that with enough will and enough willpower, we could do that. Well, this fascinated me because that's what I wanted to be about. I wanted to will myself out of fear. So I was all about that and studying how to do that so that I could live in the world as it is with less fear. And one of the things that struck me most about reading and studying him for several years, I really got into it, of course, is that he did a experiment where he put a snake, a little asp, a tiny, kind of a small snake, in a plexiglass, and put it up to his face so that he could see there's no danger in it. He absolutely could see it was harmless, could not hurt anything or anybody. And then he would will himself not to be afraid of that snake through his intellect, that he could say see that there's no risk here. And every time that snake would strike, he would jerk. So he could not react. This hardwiring, this instinctual survival was running the show, even when you could see intellectually there's no real threat here. So this has been helpful to me in my own life of wanting to be less afraid and accepting that I am afraid and I can't help that I'm afraid or when I'm afraid. And I've practiced and diligently in devotion to accept fear as a part of my human experience and how to have fear and fear not have me. So if we're wired for this, like we read here about, and we're wired like this was demonstrated through these other psychologists, Carl Jung, for example, the two fears, only two fears that we bring to the planet, and that everything else has been learned, that it is conditioning. Is there hope in that? Do you see some hope in that? So in looking at the list, I noticed that that anger is part of my human experience. Discontent, anxious, stressful, impatient, triggered, tired, hurt, right on down the list. The more that I dwell there, the more that I allow those feelings without looking at what's an alternative for me, the deeper into it I go. I've also learned, and painfully I'd say, that I could not bypass those feelings. And any attempt to suppress them, depress them, disown them, deny them, actually created a reservoir of them, and therefore they are more problematic. So the more I don't face them, and that was one of the quotes that came to me this week from another source, like, until I face what I don't want to face, then it's in my face, basically. So then it's required me to tell the truth about having these emotions and allowing some space for these emotions to be here, and to not get more offended by these emotions and myself and others, and not to get more addicted and demanding that somebody be accepting, feel safe when they can't, get happy, 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 or pretend that we're happy, happy, happy all the time, or should be happy, happy, happy all the time. And when I have accepted then these fears, this emotional base that is part of our humanity, I'm naturally more in that polarity. I have more acceptance. I have more understanding. I feel more balanced. I have more appreciation, more empowerment, more confidence, if you will. So if then our fear of falling, loud noises, is all that we're born with, everything else is conditioning, that which has been learned. Milagro says it is the bad news is we learned these fears. The good news is we also learned these fears. So then through learning, then they can unlearn, recondition, replace with something new. Now, I've known many of you for decades, worked with you in intense situations, emotional fields, professional and personal, and I've absolutely witnessed you recondition your minds, recondition your heart, recondition your thinking. And I've worked at that since my earliest memories on how to change what I could. So then this racial conditioning has been based on violence is maintained through violence. And when it comes to the two emotions, then violence is from the emotion of fear. And we know that violence begets violence. And even Byron Katie says it as victims are violent people. Victims are violent people. So this violence keeps us stuck in a cycle of its own making. So then to stop this violence, we've got to think differently. This is not news to anybody tonight. And to consider the power that's contained in the other polarity of emotion that we can refer to, that's referred to here in the book as the emotion of love, the other polarity. So whatever you would call it. And then the question then is, how do you do that? And I'd love to hear your answer to this. How do you lean toward love, lean toward acceptance, lead toward understanding, lead toward connection, empowerment, lean toward confidence, freedom, when there is continuous violence coming at you? How do you do it? How have you done it? Joy.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the question, Martha, and the kind of the recap of my experience, my journey as well. And I'm just going to jump in and say I try and fail quite often, right, to do that. But the more so it's easy when I'm not being triggered, right? Then I can kind of maintain that balance. But when I am hit by something that maybe triggers one of the fear emotions, it's much harder to maintain that balance at that time, or to even accept and like a previously unacceptable emotion, right? So my work really is feeling the feeling, feeling the emotion, getting out of as much judgment of myself as I can, and or judgment of the other that I am in a contention with, and then doing the practices that will help me get back into that balance of the polarities, which could be many, many things, but and just being in a group or with other like-minded people who are on this journey, and who you help facilitating that kind of healing. Those are just some of the things that will help me regain that balance, and then just keeping on with the practicing the the good, getting more informed, and maybe being less startled by even some of the things that I find unacceptable out in the world, like the things I'm learning about prisons and those kind of things, like taking them on face value. This is where we are. and just doing my little part to help.
Yeah. It's sweet, honey. It's like, I just relate to Joy of it too much, including our success and failure, and I tried and it didn't go so well. And so, albeit, so I was willing to, though. And like a willingness, has some power to it.
Yeah.
Willingness has power. And I remember doing some things that I just took so much heat for over my life and who I was friends with. And I shared some last week about bringing people home and the naivete that I had in doing that. And then my guilt or my regret that I'd maybe put them in a dangerous situation that I didn't even know of because I didn't know this prejudice existed or to that level. Like I just was clueless about that. And then having to learn, through that way. And I remember being out and just walking to my apartment, and I had some food or something, and I met somebody on the street that happened to be a Black man, and I crossed the street and handed this food to him. And whoever they was leaving the church and driving by saw me doing it. And they said they panicked. They wanted to stop their car and like stop me from walking up to him and like intervene in some way. Like I was at risk. Like you, Daddy used to say, you're too good for your own good, or like you're so naive, like you'll put yourself in risky situations without thinking about what you're dealing with,
Yeah.
And I didn't have any fear about that. I didn't know any fear. It just felt like the most normal thing in the world. So I don't want to be naive, of course. And I also don't want to shut my heart down to what I'm guided to do because of this color of somebody's skin or who's on the street or something like that too. And that this failing back and forth. And I watched this movie this past week called Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh,
I'll see that.
I read the book. Yeah.
And there was such a poignant time in there where that young girl, went in there, and this Black couple was going to help her. And the man said to the woman something like, "No, you be careful. You be careful." And I thought, oh my God, that's somebody telling me to be careful. And she said, be careful, my butt. The Bible don't tell us to be careful. Jesus didn't tell us to be careful. Jesus told us to get up off our butts and go do something for humanity and like take care of people like this and reach us. So I don't want to hear nothing about your being careful. And I thought, oh my God, she just expressed what I want to at times. Like I'm just so over being careful and want to get back to what feels like a truer nature in me without being dumb or naive about it, and not having a sense not to walk into, a situation that could be threatening. And I don't want to live feeling like that everything is a threat either.
Right.
And particularly when I don't have any direct experience of it, like in an imagination of threat. And a perceived threat, like the snake, a perceived threat versus what's knowing having the discernment and the good sense to follow our own guidance about what is an actual threat in situations that are actual threat versus what is a perceived or an imagined threat.
Yeah.
So
Martha,
Mhm.
I just wanted to jump in and say, as I'm listening to you, I heard you describe what it is to choose love in a situation when your experience and your rational brain says yes, and you're also going to get you're going to get hurt, and you choose love over the fear and go out and do it anyway. And to me, as a Protestant pastor, it goes right back to Christ on the cross and what is the most powerful expression of love that we are to understand and teach. So I see that lesson very clearly. I haven't been able to do it yet myself, but I heard you articulate it really well. I mean, that's what it is, to choose love and go out in there and, not be afraid, even though you're likely going to get hurt.
Thank you, sweetheart. So speaks about what you value yourself, honey. Is there anybody else? Ron? Mhm.
What seems to be helpful to me is seeing the challenge, the difficulty, the frustration, the fear as this dimensions of this earthly experience of the world around me. And that in order to deal with love, to grasp love, practice love, what I feel I must do is connect with the higher place within me and go to source, which means reaching out within my mind to that higher place, calling upon spirit, calling upon the power and presence of God to take over, and opening myself as best I can to be that channel by which that comes about, and allow it to unfold as best I can, minimizing the influence of this earthly surroundings, and as best as I'm able to allow that energy to come through me as it will.
Thank you for living it. And the group says amen. So continue to reflect along this. Brenna, glad you made it in, honey, today. Julie. So how can you stay centered in a world with constant violation? Somewhere, constantly, there is violence. Violence, you see it, you witness it, you read about it, you know about it, it's in the history. So how, with this present, how can we then, if we're going to use this healing code and use this as a prescription for healing this conditioning, in this case, whatever it is, racism, any matters of this, and to find wholeness and to be then the champions of a reconditioning that leans ever more often toward away from this fear that causes this violence into another arena. How are we going to do it? So how can we stay centered in a world where there's constantly some violation? Secret.
I am just unmuting myself and seeing if I need to lower my hand. I don't. Thank you so much, Martha, for your presentation and analysis. I am always deeply moved by the fact that you, on a number of occasions, are on the verge of tears, and like you care so much, and this affects me. Your caring, and and Joy, I very much appreciated what you had to say. I could relate, and I learned from it. I think for me, the other night I was reading a copy of Ms. Magazine, and it was on the Roe v. Wade decision, and I got into such a state of outrage and indignation, thinking of all the implications of this. And I got really mad at myself, and I thought, why haven't you taken any action to move against this? Because when it reminded me of George Floyd a couple of years ago, and I had the similar like outrage, like, this is America. How can this is North America? How can this be happening? It's outrageous. And yet, because of the pandemic and various other things, health issues, whatever, I didn't really do anything. And the other night, I was just moved with this anger at myself to think, I really need to I plotted out something for myself, a form of action, protest action. And I think that for me, it's going to be the only way, pardon me, one way that I can, because on one hand, I have to accept that the country and the hemisphere is in the state that it is right now, a lot of turmoil, a lot of progress, a lot of setbacks, backlash. But on the other hand, I don't want to sit by, just talk about it. I really feel moved to take, even if it's the smallest action. I think for you, that's a huge action for you to walk across the street to somebody you don't know, a person of a different color, in that circumstance, which could have been 100% benign, could have been dangerous. We don't know. We don't know. But you took this neighborly, welcoming kind of action, the way your mom was. So for me, in order to combat the detriment that violence does to my head, to my world, to our world, I need to take some small action, and to be a part of a group larger than me that is taking big actions.
Yeah, thank you, Sigrid. That's important for me too. And I remember a similar feeling from that George Floyd. And I actually I felt kind of physically paralyzed for a little bit, but not so much that I went and researched every single organization that was about equal justice and serving every organization that was serving to bring some balance to this and some equality to this and some justice to this, and made
Donations.
to
Yeah.
every single
Yeah.
one of them. I made a donation
Yeah.
to every single one of them because it's all I could
Yeah.
do at the time. But I had to do something. I had to do something. And I understand that that's not suitable for some. I've had criticism over that. Like, yeah, it's fine to sit back and throw money at something. It's fine to sit back and, throw a check and think you've done something. And it's like, I didn't claim to have done something. I can just tell you I did all I
We
could.
need it all. We need it all
I did all I could
forms.
do, which is
Yeah.
somebody that is out there, is formulating something, is leading an idea, is leading a protest, whatever it is, that then I'll be of some support of that when I can't be of any more support to it than that. At the time, I didn't have something else to give besides that at that time. So in action, and that was one of the things as I went into this, like, we'll learn something every week, we'll learn something, and I'd love to hear what you're learning if you want to share that, and that we're going to do something. We're going to decide, and that's the call of this tonight. I mean, reading right out of this, and this is on page 73. To heal, we need to cross the bridge that takes us away from fear. And for me, I remember hearing it as it's love or fear, and that just irritated me to death. Love or fear, because it's love and fear, and a dance and a tension between them both. And as Joy says, sometimes I can and sometimes I can, and I fail and I get up, and love and fear. So that works better for me, love and fear, not love or fear. And what is going to cause me systematically and more routinely to lean squarely back in the direction of love, even while fear is there. So how to have fear and fear not have me. And reading again, before that happens, healing moves us back and forth. So it's just like you described, Joy. That's how Milagros writes it. The healing moves us back and forth. And I've seen it. And just like when the car's stuck and you give it gas, you just go deeper in. And there's got to be some rocking back and forth of this. There's got to be some movement toward it, a movement away to kind of unstick us. So healing helps us to see, feel, and experience the difference between fear and love, and the emotions tied to fear and love. And to give us the opportunity, as Ron said tonight, the opportunity to choose, to connect, to align, to whatever you would call it, and enact to whatever degree we can a power of choice. A power of choice. And healing asks us where we're going to visit, For healing, where will I visit and where will I live? And where am I going to live more often in the polarity of love and less often in the polarity of fear? And to, if this is true, this science, that my human nature is not a fear. That to live out of our own human nature is not a nature of fear. So if babies are only born with 2 fears and everything else is learned, what is our true nature? She says, let's take it a bit further. I'll come right to you, Karen, after I finish this read. And consider what emotion makes you feel safe. What emotion makes you feel safe and comfortable? And to notice that we're not comfortable when we're angry, righteous, disconnected, insecure, and closed off. We don't feel safe and comfortable. And we're more comfortable when we feel accepted, cared for, relaxed, more at ease. The very reason we want to heal from racism is because we're so uncomfortable with it. And we can't be so uncomfortable with it that we can't even have a conversation about it and heal. So this bridge from fear to love and the traffic back and forth, compassion, forgiveness. So hundreds of years of violence, theft, imprisonment, daily aggressions, microaggressions. And as Deborah says, and not to lose our hope in this, not to lose hope that healing is possible. And we be the leaders in light of that hope. Go ahead, Karen. Thank you for being here, honey.
Oh, this is so good to be with you and experience this. And yeah, fear and love. And one of the things that, and you've probably, I had to miss last week, and I'm not sure what you covered, but you've spoken, I know, to the importance that Milagros emphasizes on racial literacy and having us know this horrid history with all that you're describing and worse. And just sitting in that is just awful. But I have to own that although she says we're not responsible for what happened back then. It happened. I am a beneficiary as a white person. I'm a beneficiary of all that ugliness and violence and everything. Well, the violence is still happening, but that's the history part of it. I'm a beneficiary of it. So it's like, okay, it happened and it was awful. I'm not responsible for what other people did back then, but I am responsible for now. And where I come up against fear right now is coming up against the overt racism, the backlash now. And I've found that what I felt called to do is to go back to A Course in Miracles to help me to help me with the fear. And I've been reminded that each of those and what's currently happening, this is just helpful to me. What's currently happening is that the horridness that we are still experiencing now, the backlash that's happening today, I mean, elections are today, is a call for love. It's a call for love, as horrid as it is, you know, and I'm not there completely, you know, but I'm working on that to, you know, and that's what I got so much from Milagros, is that with the healing, that is replaced with compassion, you know, toward the people that are totally in fear and reacting to it. I don't know if any of this is helpful or not, but it helped me to go there and so I'm re-embarking on the lessons, the daily lessons in A Course in Miracles to help me, because I was getting stuck. I was in fear and getting stuck, you know, not being able to move forward. And the other thing, the fear of doing it wrong, I've, you know, my experience has been just to own, you know, I've spoken to you before about reading the book White Fragility, and how I'm going, oh my gosh, she's writing about me. She's writing about me. And owning that, but then just having to be in acceptance of that. And I don't want to go on and on, but reaching out for real conversation, real heartfelt, honest conversation about what Robin DiAngelo calls, we're going to keep stepping in it. I'm going to keep stepping in. I'm going to be making mistakes. When I realize I've made a mistake, then go back to that person and own what I did and make a repair. And what I'm getting in response to that is appreciation, and the relationship. Then there's a little bit of healing in that relationship, and that gives me courage to keep doing it. I keep stepping in it. I'd stepped in it on Sunday, and you know, again, and just going back, because what I get is when I'm real with my history. And I just, one more thing I want to say, I've just come in full. I've been reading Mark Charles, and he focuses more on the Native American experience and the Black experience, but he was writing about, you know, my family was always proud of the fact that we've traced our heritage back to the Mayflower. It was a big deal to my mother. We traced our history back to the Mayflower, kind of ego thing, you know, proud, blah, blah, blah. And after reading him, I'm going, oh shit, there's more. There's more. So, but it's like my current awareness and my family history is just boom, you know, conflict. And what am I going to do with that now, you know? So, but anyway, I won't keep talking, but
Well, it's helpful, honey. Thank you. And I told y'all, I think when I started this, I had to do it. I had to loosen my own fear of doing it wrong, of using the wrong terminology, using the wrong words, even to work with Milagros directly, to do that demystifying race class that I was afraid to share on there, that I would say black and I ain't supposed to say black, and I was brown skin, white skin. And it's like, what's the right term? And it's like, it's not the right term for her, but it's the right term for him. And it's like, I would stay paralyzed in that if I wasn't willing to just step in it. And including like this story in this book was so meaningful to me about some man, remember he gave money like for the community and then was criticized for doing that. And it's like, that's me right there. Like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but here's what I can do to fund something. And then not ever thinking about that it's going to be offensive, or that's racism or something like that, with no intention, no malice whatsoever in my heart. And there it is. And it's like, okay, then I've stepped in it again. And I've got enough courage or willingness or uncommon motivation to stay with this, to sit and hear how that was offensive, and then to do my reparations and to start over again. And I don't want to, because that happened, I'm not going to withhold writing a check to every organization because that might be the wrong thing to do. I can't like fall off that, into that pit either. So willingness to step in it, and then willingness to say, okay, what can I do from here? And where did I cause offense? And then backing up to get it. But this Course in Miracles, and you finding whatever's going to work for you, Karen, and the rest of us to find what's going to work for us, honey. But that was the basis of this question at the end of chapter 6, which is in opening up this question about forgiveness, which the Course and most sacred texts address directly. If forgiveness is part of the healing process, healing is part of the healing process, and it is going to be the way for some, one of the ways that we end this cycle. So do what you can. I do what I can, and have been using forgiveness as a tool since my earliest memory, a daily tool to look at where I put somebody out of my heart today, and to look at my part, what was my part, what I didn't feel right about, and circle back as quickly as I can to make amends for that, and to learn from it, and then to be sure I'm including myself in that.
Yes.
So that I don't hold against myself that I was offensive today. So not to spiritually abandon myself in it too. So think about then, if forgiveness is essential here in this healing racism and healing in general, where could you work? In what area could you extend an olive branch just to decide that I've had just enough of it, and I'm going to extend a forgiveness in a higher, greater way than I've ever done before. So think about what yours would be for this day, this week, this night, until we meet again. And one of the questions from this chapter includes, is there someone in your life who you can speak with and share your emotions around racism? So to think about who that might be, and maybe that can be one of our actions for this week, that we actually find someone that we can have an open, honest, authentic conversation with about our emotions around racism. And if I can be that for any of you, it's a yes. I'm all about it. All right, big deep breath. Let's see if there's something on your mind, something you want to say or bring up tonight, or ask about or discuss.
Martha,
Go ahead, Bonnie.
I've been having some pretty eye-opening discussions. My action from the first week that you talked has been to notice how I use words and how I use the words black, red, and yellow, and even white, because white is usually referred to in the positive sense. Pure, good, white. And black and yellow and red, when they're used, like we brought up in our small group, if you're in the black, it's good, but if you're in the red, it's bad. Well, that's Native Americans. That's still bad. It's red. And even though it sounds like it's good for the black, it's bad for the red. So, and when you're afraid of something, you're called yellow, scared, you're yellow bellied. And there's like a lot of colors that we use in our language to denigrate. And I think it comes from the racism. It's the racism thing. And I've been noticing it in myself. And then when I talk with people, I'll stop somebody in the sentence and say, do you know you just said the word blackballed? You just said, well, we're blackballing him. We don't want him in our group anymore. And I'll think, oh gosh, that's one of these words. And I'll just jump in and point it out, like black. You're saying blackballed. That's a negative way of using the word black. Let's just pay attention to that. And I'm really noticing how words really are harmful. The color words are really harmful. And I'm working on, my action has been to work on noticing that in myself and talking with others about it. So it's a simple thing, but it's universal because we all use these words. So that's one of my actions I've been taking.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. Deborah?
Yeah, Martha, you were talking about donating and where to put money. I saw a story last week about Black families that are starting to homeschool, and the rate of homeschooling of Black children has increased a whole lot more than the white counterpart. A lot of it has to do with the children not getting any kind of history, and also the tendency now to want to erase the history of slavery. And I thought about myself, you know, what I learned in school was, okay, there was a Civil War, Blacks, you know, the slaves, and Lincoln freed the slaves, and that was it. You know, Lincoln was shot. I was given a book by my civics/history homeroom teacher when I was 15, I believe. And it totally opened my eyes to that whole era. And I remember reading a story about a woman that was lynched, Mary Turner, pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and it hurt me so badly to think that people could do this to another person. It changed me. And I read, and the tendency now for school districts to want to pull that history, where there really hasn't been a lot of teaching in the first place, but they're wanting to pull it because they don't want their kids to feel guilty. It's upsetting to me because it's erasing something. And unless you have an understanding of what a people went through and how it relates to now, you know, we're talking about forgiveness. I think Milagros' book is geared more to whites or Caucasians than it is for Black people. I don't know how you find forgiveness as a Black person. There is something known as the hate stare. It's walking, and this is now, you know, I heard somebody say something about, well, things are better now. Maybe, you know, maybe according to laws and things like that, but there is still something that happens, the hate stare, or walking into a tavern and, you know, the voices stop because of the color of his skin or, you know, a tattoo, whatever it is that is not, you know, white oriented. So circling back, I've decided to give money toward, there are several agencies that are helping parents set up for homeschooling. A lot of the parents are pulling their kids out because they're saying that their kids are being disciplined and told things that the other students are not, the white students are not going through. I know for me, I didn't know about a Black history class until I got out of high school, which was in 1969. And at the community college, they had Black history. And I just feel it's really important to know what happened as far as Black history, as we do about, you know, the generals in the Civil War and all these heroes and statues. So that's, I circled around, but I've decided to donate toward these agencies that are helping Black families so that they can homeschool their kids, because I think it's important that the kids get that history, Black students as well as white students.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Good for you, honey. Please give Bill an extra hug, honey, and a happy birthday hug, honey.
I will. He's inside with family. Grandchildren came over to see him. I will. Thank you, Martha.
Yeah. So the healing of racism is not just about changing minds. It's about changing hearts. Racism is emotional for all people. Healing is about looking within, being conscious of our own fears and our own triggers. And then, as we've said here week after week, and again tonight, taking responsibility for our actions, our reactions, and our interactions. We already know we can change laws, and that helps. Be all about that. And if people don't change, they will continue to act out of their internalized racial conditioning, regardless of the laws. They'll create laws that continually adhere to the former system, the caste system, continues to harm. And despite all the civil rights laws we have in place, we still see people through the filters of our own racial conditioning, despite the laws. So these emotions then are powerful, an entryway into the heart, and teaching people not to feel, or teaching people to bypass feelings or to ignore feelings or to deny feelings when they come up, is teaching people to detach from their own humanity. And how much I regret the decades that was anywhere near my teaching. So instead, our feelings interact. And our feelings interact with our whole being, our senses, our organs, hormones, all of it, and create a reaction in our hearts that can be measured, that shows up electromagnetically, it shows up heart math and all sorts of scientific ways. So according to this data here, the heart's electrical field is 60 times greater than what's generated by the brain. This field of the heart can be detected anywhere on the surface of the body. So it refers to it as entrainment. The magnetic field produced by the heart is more than 100 times greater in strength than the field generated by the brain, and can be detected up to 3 feet away from the body in all directions. So feel that, care for that, ignite that, reignite that, whatever you call it, love, resilience, tenacity, will, acceptance, empowerment, just anything in the world you can do to call on to say, I'm going to choose that. I'm going to lean toward that, being that. And it's not going to be minus the truth of what is, the truth of what happens, the truth of the potential of this. So no denying that. And an absolute awakening that healing is not an academic exercise. And it will not be done through the intellect. So as we re-engage all of ourselves, the mind, body, spirit, the emotions, that we do so according to most of us follow the teachings of one power and one presence. That then an innate inherent power in us is a way to create and is creating. And that healing is about becoming greater than the pain. So not denying the pain and how to become greater than the pain. And gaining a new way of seeing ourselves, a new way of seeing others. And consciously creating new connections with the world and all the people in it. So take a breath into hope, having some hope, keeping hope alive in you, cared for in you, and not to let the realities of this, the physical and violent realities of this, take away your hope. So you believe, and I believe, that healing from racism is possible, or we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. We wouldn't be reading another book. We wouldn't be trying to learn from somebody else how they do this. So we're not minus hope, or we wouldn't be here. So from chapter 18, which we'll get into next week, then that part 2 of this book, and you don't have to be there. That's just what I'll be looking at. That's not our disease. Racism, that's not our disease. Keep working. Keep working. All right. Love to you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Martha.
I'll
Love
see you next
Love
time.
you.
Love you too, all of you. Thank you for
Love
being
you.
here. Mhm.
Thank you, Martha. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Martin.
Well,
Thanks, Martha.
you're welcome, honey.